All right, everyone, we are at 2 o'clock. Thank you for your patience and good afternoon. Welcome to this listening session and information sharing session hosted by the Wyoming Business Council, the Wyoming Mining Association, and the University of Wyoming. My name is Warren Appel. I'm going to cover a few housekeeping matters before I hand you off to Ron to introduce our agenda and panelists for today. Written questions may be submitted using the Q&A feature on the webinar toolbox. We will share these with the panelists as time allows. Please do not submit questions via the webinar chat box. That does sometimes get lost. Individuals wishing to speak or ask questions should utilize the raise the hand feature on the webinar toolbar. Please keep your microphone muted at all times when you're not speaking and keep background noise to a minimum. This is a courtesy, of course, to all participants, but will help us ensure we've got good audio on our recordings. And yes, we are recording today. We will make the recording available on our website, wyomingbusiness.org, as soon as possible. With that, I will hand you off to Wyoming Business Council Strategic Partnerships Director, Ron Goldberg, to introduce our speakers and agenda. Ron, whenever you are ready, sir.
All right. Thank you, Warren. I had to remember to unmute myself. I want to thank everybody on the panel today and everybody who is joining us. Seeing a lot of names on there from private business people, legislator too, it looks like. Thank you very much. This is part of a continuing series of industry webinars the Business Council's launched 3 weeks ago or so. We had a big general private industry one with Amy Lee, the district director for the Wyoming Small Business Administration Office. That was really focused on the launch of the SBA's EIDL and PPP loans. Then we've done oil and gas, and we have the mining industry today. We will continue these. We also, this morning, launched, in light of the governor's transition plan with some easing of restrictions for certain businesses and tweaking of the 3 executive orders issued earlier. We wanted to respond and provide experts to help address questions and help walk businesses through the changes to prepare for May 1st. That kicked off this morning at 8 a.m. We had another one at noon, and just to let everybody know, and the URL will show up later in this presentation, but those will continue 2 a day, tomorrow and Friday. So plenty of opportunities. It's really important we hear from industry to help inform not only the Wyoming Business Council, but our partners, the governor's office, legislators out there. So this engagement is very important, and I would thank everyone. Warren, if you want to kick to the next slide. Well, quickly, Business Council's also created a business listings webpage. I think there was a recognized gap there, especially in the coronavirus pandemic we're all dealing with. This is a tool we've used for available properties for business recruitment expansion. And we added another layer to this for the business listings. We encourage businesses to participate. It's starting to fill up. I think there are 800 or some businesses, and it's from retail to services to hospitality, daycares, all kinds of businesses are getting in there. It's a good way to say, hey, we're open, or we're open with these restrictions, and here are the hours, and here's how we can serve you. In the upper right corner, you can't really see it on this slide deck, but there is a link to submit a business. Then it gets to our staff and looked at and then posted on this business listing site. So wideopenwyoming.org is available as a service to Wyoming businesses also. So please use that. Warren, we'll skip ahead here. The mining industry, as you all know, a varied mix from coal to soda ash to uranium, bentonite, what have you. So we have a lot of guests who have volunteered their time today to be prepared when we start getting questions to respond in their area of expertise. There may be some questions that we need to write down and address, but we will be recording this and it will be available, and we will respond directly to as many questions as we can. But a lot of this, as I say, helps inform a lot of the business council and a lot of partners. So we might not be aware of something, and we can tackle that and get those answers back out there. We have Travis Detai, their executive director of the Wyoming Mining Association. Ed Sinikowski, he's the vice president of research and economic development for the University of Wyoming, UW, and the Business Resource Network, which provides state funding. A lot of the programs in the Business Resource Network, which includes the Small Business Development Center, Manufacturing Works, Market Research Center. There are a lot of those. A lot of them receive matching federal funding. So we work with the university in a lot of capacities and the BRN. Liz Gagan with the Department of Workforce Services is joined by two members of their staff, Andrea Hickson and Chris Funk. Tammy Johnson, Andy Martinez, Tammy with the Wyoming Afl-Cio, and Andy is president of the local United Steelworkers. Amy Lee, who I mentioned earlier, is here and has been a lot of webinars hosted by a lot of our partners and a lot of our webinars. And I don't want to speak for Amy, but she is just an expert at trying to explain SBA loan programs. And if she doesn't know something, she finds the answer quickly. And then Fred Von Ahrens with Genesis Alkali. So a lot of people here who can help walk us through the questions. Next page, Warren, please. Final bit of house cleaning, just kind of update everybody. You're probably aware, yesterday, Governor announced this transition process for Wyoming to begin easing restrictions for some businesses beginning Friday. We won't go into great detail, but and as I mentioned, we have the twice daily webinars to help businesses ask questions how the easing of restrictions affects their business. That is to register. It's wyomingbusiness.org/transition. You will see 2 a day calendar listings. So you'll see 2 for tomorrow, 2 for Friday. Click on the time that suits you best, and you'll get a registration for that time for that webinar that you chose in your email. We also are recording those, and those will be posted on that same wyomingbusiness.org/transition webpage. Recordings aren't up quite yet from launching today, but they'll soon be up. The content, the presentation material is going to be pretty much the same through Friday. What we don't know is the questions and where those might take the discussions. So content very much the same, discussions may be a little bit different. No specific restrictions on mining producers or service companies germane to this discussion today. And of course, this measured approach recognizes that COVID is an ever-changing reality we're dealing with, and the conditions can vary from county to county. And in some cases, it's potential that if there's a spike in the metrics the Department of Health is watching daily, there could be a strengthening of the restrictions again. So it's a real fluid state we're in right now. Resources, we've been continuing to advise people, go to your lender, your local banks. There's also the SBA loan options. And there's a lot of links and FAQs and resources at wyomingbusiness.org/COVID-19. And then that is a sub web page under the governor's covid19.wyo.gov website. The covid19.wyo.gov website has not only business and financial assistance page the Business Council created, but also health department links, workforce services, transportation, a lot of topics. So with that, Warren, let's kick to the next page. I would like to sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I first want to introduce Travis and let him, as the executive director of the Wyoming Mining Association, kind of open up with some comments to get us rolling, and then we could move forward with the Q&A portion, so we make sure we have a lot of time for the private industry on here to be the voice. Thanks, Travis.
Okay, well, thank you, Ron. Certainly appreciate the Wyoming Business Council and the University of Wyoming and all the panelists agreeing to do this today. We're in a very difficult and unprecedented time in the mining industry in Wyoming, as is everyone across the country. What I'm hoping for, I'm looking at the list of participants. We've got representatives from all of our sectors of the Wyoming mining industry, from coal to uranium to bentonite to trona and soda ash. And we also have a lot of our representatives of our service and supply companies on the line as well. And what I'm hoping as we move through this in the next hour, hour and a half, is for these people to kind of visit with you a little bit and let you guys know from your point of view or where you stand, some of the issues these guys are facing right now. Again, it's a very tough and changing environment. And, specifically what I asked is for these guys to come with questions and descriptions of what they're dealing with today and where they expect to be in the future as we move out of this. And kind of hope to come together to maybe look for some solutions where the state and the university and others can build those public-private partnerships to maybe help us recover from some of this stuff. And with that, again, thanks, and let's see where we go.
All right. Thanks again, Travis. So as you can see on the screen, we have the list of people here available to provide information, answer questions, take notes if we need to go back and work on some questions and get answers to them. Warren, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. I encourage people to, if you would like to, type questions in the Q&A. And maybe, Warren, we could open up to some callers' questions if we need to start there.
Absolutely. Anyone calling in on the line who would like to pose a live question, please use the raise your hand feature. We will call on you in turn and get your microphone off mute. You may also submit written questions if you choose using the question and answer tool, also found in your toolbar. Those are a lot easier to track than any questions that get submitted via our chat box. We do have a raised hand from Jason Beggar. Jason, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question.
All right. I guess first I'll make sure that everybody can hear me. Am my audio working?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I've been working on with part of, certainly a larger group, is looking at the federal funding out of this most recent stimulus package. It's got some pretty stringent sidebars, regarding, where basically local government entities, be it government entities, local, state, what have you, counties, in the direct response to the COVID crisis. Wyoming has been allocated about $1.25 billion. And the rules are, it has to be directly attributed to a cost associated with COVID, whether it's PPE, maybe you had to buy equipment to allow employees to telecommute, something like that. But we've also been given the direction to be creative with it. And I don't really know, if anybody has an answer to this, but I'm throwing it out there. Does anybody from the mining sector see an opportunity to maybe tap into some of those funds? And they might have to be run through, a state agency where there's workforce services, the state office of mine inspector, something or another. Very open-ended question, but you know, and even just noodle on it, and you can always email back after the fact. But, you know, we're definitely kicking the tires and looking for creative ways to use that allocation. So it's kind of a question and a statement there.
Well, thank you, Jason. That gets the ball rolling. Please use the raise your hand button if anybody would like to throw some ideas out there.
We do have a couple of questions coming in on the Q&A box. Just wondering how the state is going to utilize workers' compensation to pay for COVID-19 issues. I am hearing there may be a bill on this, and wondering how this may relate to workers' comp.
Andrea or Chris from Workforce Services, are you interested?
Hey, Ron, this is Liz. I can probably handle this a little bit easier. There is a bill that has been proposed by Management Council regarding COVID and employees who are currently covered by workers' comp, and if they were to get COVID, presumably on the job. So there is a current proposed legislation regarding that. The statute as it exists right now, I believe would allow some workers' comp benefits for people in high-risk industries who may have contracted the disease. So there is some workers' comp benefit now, and the Management Council is talking about expanding that benefit in the future.
Thank you.
Ron?
Yeah.
This is Andrea Hickson. Just in regards to the comment on the stimulus package, I think it's really early, but I do know that Workforce Services is working on very, very beginning stages for planning for some of the stimulus. So I think there will be more discussions going on, and then you can definitely, forecast us seeing opportunities in the future that any of the mining association and businesses can utilize those funds. So I think it's just so early at this time, and so maybe we can follow up at a later time.
Thank you, Andrea.
Ron, may I answer a little bit about the workers' comp as well?
Yes, please.
This is Tammy with Wyoming State Afl-Cio. I've been working with a couple people at Workforce Services and with a couple legislators. And the current proposed legislation, I know there was going to be a new draft today and I haven't seen it, allows all workers who contract COVID to, in a nutshell, to a presumption that they pick that up at work. And so the workers' comp would cover that. But the problem is that the current legislation and current statutes only cover workers who are considered extra hazardous. And that's a classification of workers that covers a lot of kinds of workers. Most people in the mining industry are covered. Although I don't know about office staff and things like that, but people who are working in a condition that's considered extra hazardous, which is anyone who's covered with workers' comp has to be determined to be extra hazardous before they're covered. So we would like to see some things in this legislation change, but that's kind of where it is right now.
Thank you for those answers. Looks like Warren, we have a raised hand, more workforce-related questions. Go ahead, Warren. I cut you off. Sorry.
That's quite all right. We do have a raised hand from John Freeman. John, you are live. Please go ahead and state your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Management Council will have proposed legislation made public probably late tonight, early tomorrow morning. our management council public meeting on Friday. So I would encourage you to look at that. That proposed legislation. If you have input, please get to management council people to where that you can suggest things. One of the changes that they're going to make is that if you have the virus, then I'm losing words today. That it would be covered under workman's comp, and we're also trying to get to where that your fees don't go up, but it's kind of a delicate balance between all that stuff. But the important thing that I would like to say is please look at that proposed legislation either late tonight or early in the morning and get back with us with suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
We do have another call line in on the question box. Has anyone heard if the state will be able to back off on the unemployment insurance ratings for our employers' rates in the future? Will this take a legislative fix, or can it be done by rule?
Warren, I can answer that one for you. So the charging and non-charging for unemployment tax in Wyoming is all in the statutes. Unfortunately, as we looked through everything that we could to try to make a change for non-charging because of COVID-19 related claims, there was nothing in the rules that we could change to allow for the non-charging. The non-charging is very specific to the statute. So I know Director Cooley has been working with the Attorney General's office for us to come up with a potential legislative change to accommodate that, and hopefully we will have that resolved in the next few months so that it doesn't affect employers' rates for 2021.
Thank you for that answer.
Another question from the Q&A box. Paid sick leave can make the difference between workers going to work sick and infecting others, or staying home to recover. Is there any willingness to extend, for instance, 14 days of paid sick leave to all workers in the mining industry to keep the entire workforce safer?
Is there anybody able to tackle that question?
Ron, this is Liz. I may be able to handle it just slightly. Depending on the size of the employer, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act may provide the 14 days of paid sick leave. If the employer has more than 500 employees, then I am unaware of that type of paid sick leave being available for those folks. That certainly is something that someone who is interested could talk with their legislator about, but I am unaware right now of a program that would help those folks.
Thank you.
We had another question come in on the chat box. Amy Lee, I think you are ready to tackle that one head on if you want to jump for it.
Thank you so much. We received a question about whether or not any mining companies have been successful in receiving CARES Act funding. Relative to the Paycheck Protection Program, during the first tranche of funding, so this would have been through April 16th, and these are national data, just very high level NAICS subsector data. There were 11,168 approved loans for the mining industry, totaling just under $3.9 billion. And so mining companies are absolutely eligible to apply, contingent on, of course, all the other eligibility requirements. for CARES Act funding. That second tranche of funding is active now. As of yesterday, we had seen numbers showing that about $60 billion of the $310 billion appropriated for this second tranche of funding had been secured by small businesses. And so if there are any companies on the phone or on the call today that are thinking about this, I would urge you not to wait and to make sure that you're in contact with your banker, with your lender today, if you haven't already done so. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Amy. And there is a list of Wyoming lenders that are approved and working with the SBA, right? That
there is, Ron, and basically it's every one of our Wyoming chartered banks, sba.gov/WY, all of the lenders that would normally participate in SBA lending, as well as a number of credit unions and non-bank lenders have applied for specific Paycheck Protection Program authority. If you want to see the list, sba.gov/WY, about halfway down the page on the right-hand side under lending activities.
Thank you, Amy.
As a reminder, any participants having questions can use the Raise My Hand feature on your webinar toolbar. We can call on you live. You can also submit your questions using the Q&A window. We are tracking all of those questions, so any we are unable to get to today, we will resolve individually after the fact.
Okay.
Ron, if I may, I'd like to chase that question on sick leave, paid sick leave, if we could. Is there anyone from the mining companies on who could address that and talk about what they're doing to, if we don't want workers to go to work, if they're sick or if they're exposed, then what kind of sick leave, emergency sick leave, have the mining companies built in to protect the workers?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know who's on from the mining company who could answer that.
Anyone wishing to speak to the question may use the Raise Your Hand feature. We can get you live on the line.
Okay. Travis, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I was just getting ready to get put on the spot. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is the opportunity to kind of let these guys know some of the things you're doing. I would hope that somebody would kind of offer some input and some information and, you know, and kind of go with the discussion from there.
We do have a raised hand from a Stephen Gilly. Apologize on the name. Stephen, you are live. Go ahead and state your question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, this is Steve Gilly from Black Butte Coal. We have sick leave for our employees as it is, and so they're utilizing that. We've also had a couple of employees who have been tested, or I should say, their spouses have been tested as potential. And therefore they were asked to self-quarantine. And in that case, we used the emergency 14 ships essentially of emergency sick leave through various legislative. I can't remember which one of the CARES Act or whatever it was that mandated that. We utilized that. That's been in a couple of cases. Other than that, it's really been no impact. However, all our employees all have paid sick leave anyway, and so they certainly have that mechanism if that 14 days of mandated paid sick leave hadn't been rolled out.
Thank you.
We have another raised hand from a Scott Durgan. Scott, you are live on the line. Please go ahead and state your question. Scott, if you have a question, you are live.
Well, I guess I was muted. Sorry. This is Scott from Peabody, and just want to let everybody know that we have full sick leave to protect everybody. If anybody's out, they get their full pay. We have both short-term and long-term pay there, so there's no issue at all with that.
Thank you, Scott. So Warren, maybe I think the next slide has a couple questions. Maybe if we could hear from industry out there, whether it's the mining operators or even hear from service companies. What struggles are you really facing right now? What maybe in terms of COVID related, what struggles that's created, but even non-COVID related, and what solutions do you see or propose, public, private, what information can you provide and thoughts to help us take a look at these things?
Again, folks, please don't be shy. Raise your hand. Tell these guys what's going on.
We have a raised hand from a Wayne Hiley. Wayne, you are live on the line. Please state your question.
Hi, thank you for your time. I just wanted to comment, in the means of what's challenging for the mining companies, and a lot of the smaller mining companies and really our uranium sector today is populated by junior mining companies. We've already been curtailed in our activities, and we're relying on access to capital from capital markets, to maintain our long-term survival. And that's becoming a challenge. The COVID-19 has really limited the capital markets, and it's limited them for the foreseeable future. I guess my question to go along with that comment is, is the Wyoming Business Council and or any other state agencies considering opening up channels to allow mining companies to access needed capital to avoid long-term permanent damage to the companies?
Yeah, sorry, I'd take it off mute. Yeah, as you know, there are no easy answers. We do have a finance manager. I think there's things we're looking at, nothing specifically right now. We have to look at the statutory barriers. I know there's a lot of work being done. I don't know if there's anybody else on the call who wants to address that, but right now there's a lot of working with like Amy Lee and the SBA and the opportunities provided there. And it would really, really helpful to hear what maybe gaps there may be in the SBA process that can inform us here in Wyoming as we work with our partners and leadership to present the challenges facing certain industries. But that's exactly where we're at right now, is more of the technical assistance and helping in those fashions.
Yeah, and Ron, this is Sarah Fitzgerald. I can hop in and add a little bit of color to that. Great comment, and just so that you know, we're hearing that from other sectors in energy, from small oil and gas operators as well. I think I would like to hear maybe what Travis might have to say about that. There's a lot of work going on with management council, as was mentioned previously, and with the legislature and state agencies and others to determine next steps when it comes to CARES Act money and things like that, and what's feasible, what's not feasible. So we are looking into that. Yeah, I wonder if Travis has anything to add to that as well.
Yeah, I would add, Sarah, just this is that we're kind of waiting, just like everybody else, to see how the money can be spent. And if there is something that can go directly to private industry to help with allaying or alleviating some of those costs that companies may have incurred in COVID-19 management or with the general health orders in general, we're waiting to see that. But again, it's hard to plan, and it's hard to to anticipate when you don't know what's coming. So hopefully there'll be some clarification on that from both the management council and the governor's office as they work through those issues.
Thank you, Sarah and Travis. If there's no follow-up comments there, Warren, looks like we're starting to get a few more questions in the Q&A. Cody has asked, is there someone at Workforce Services to help determine 2021 and future unemployment insurance rates based on what will be our new experience rating factor, if that is possible?
This is Chris. I can take that one.
Thank you.
Of course, and of course my phone's ringing now. So unfortunately, if I would assume for experience rated employers who have been in business for at least 3 years, the experience rate is based on the benefit charges and the paid taxable wages. And so unfortunately, until the actual benefit charges have come through, we won't know exactly what the benefit ratio could be. And also until we actually know whether we're going to non-charge or not some of the COVID-related claims, it's really hard to say, but I'm always open to working with employers to help them anticipate. It will run through second quarter. So 2021 rates will be based on the benefit charges through second quarter of 2020. So approximately those charges will come through approximately August. So we would have an idea, but we're not going to have an idea until then, unfortunately, because it's based on a fiscal year basis, and the fiscal year for the state ends on June 30th. But I'm always willing to help. You can reach out to our office, and I'm always willing to help employers go through their benefit charges, look at their paid taxable wages for those 2 periods, the 2 periods we have left, which is first and second quarter. It actually goes over the last 3 fiscal years, but we could sit down and take a look, and you could have an idea of what that rate is looking like for 2021. There are additional rate factors, but there's a maximum on those. So even if those rate factors, which they will go up because our trust fund, part of the rate factors are based on the health of our trust fund as well, but they, per statute, they max out as well. And I don't anticipate that we're going to request a statute change for that. I can't say that we won't. Kind of just have to watch this whole thing for a little bit and see how it's going to play out and how the trust fund is actually doing and whether we non-charge or not. But employers are more than welcome to reach out to me. I actually do the rates, so I'm very familiar with all of it, and I would be more than willing to help anyone that is wanting to anticipate what their rates will be for the next year. We can anticipate it. I don't know if we have to have a statute change for the non-charging, when that will take place. If it is non-charged, any of that, we have vowed that we will resolve all of that before the 2021 rates would go out. It's just there's so much unknown. It's kind of common with everyone right now. I think there's so much unknown, but as we go along, it's important that we communicate and we let you guys know what's going on. And like I said, you can always reach out, and I am more than willing to help you try to come up with an idea of what your rate would be for 2021.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any hands raised, Warren?
We do. We have a hand raised from Representative Sweeney. Representative Sweeney, you are live. Go ahead and state your question, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, sir, yes.
Okay, so as you can see, there's been, including my earlier question about experience ratings, and to those folks that have asked the questions, it is a number of legislators' hope that we can get this fixed either during the special session. I don't feel, and I know a number of legislators don't feel that it's very fair, especially when these layoffs, especially the restaurant industry in particular, weren't caused by the employer. So on the experience rating, even for the future or the first 2 quarters that we're in now, we'll definitely be looking at that. And that's, whether it's a statutory fix, that was my question. If it does need statutory fix, then Workforce Services definitely needs to tell us what needs done. And I'm guessing you're working with L-S-O currently in the Attorney General's office, but I've got to tell you that has to happen. And in reading the guidelines, I don't know if we're going to be able to put money towards capital. I don't see it in the guidelines, Wayne. And but as to unemployment insurance, we really are going to have to take a hard look at that, because there's an element of fairness, that's for sure. So I appreciate the question, and we'll stay on top of that.
Thank you, Representative.
Ron, this is Liz. I have something just very quick to add. There is information or that the Management Council is discussing regarding employer chargeability. I expect that they will likely discuss this at their Friday meeting, and that sometime soon there will be drafts of this legislation up on the L-S-O website. So people who are interested in kind of where this issue is, that would be a good place for you to look.
Thanks, Liz.
This is Chris. Can I add just more to that? Thank you for adding that, Liz. One of the things we're trying to do too is that we're trying to make sure that we're covering all employers as well. So part of this was in the CARES Act and the agreements that we did with the grant money that we received and requirements that we have in accepting the grant money. And so another thing that we're trying to do is, I know it's not related to mining, but we're trying to make sure we're treating all employers fairly as well. So we have reimbursing employers who are nonprofits and different types of businesses that actually pay back the benefit charges. There's some accommodation in the CARES Act as well for that, for reimbursement of that. But we're really trying to make sure that we're trying to be as fair as possible to all employers. So the non-charging for experience rated, and then the reimbursement, and how we can help those nonprofits and government as well that would have to pay back dollar for dollar every benefit charge payment that is made. So it is definitely on our radar. It's something that we're looking at and trying to figure out everything that we can to try to be fair to employers.
Thanks for that follow-up, Chris. Warren, it sounds like Representative Freeman has a question.
He does. Representative Freeman, you are live. Go ahead and state your question, sir.
I found the unmute button this time. Under legislation that we are considering in the management council. Now, what you have to remember is this has to be massaged by the management council, and then it will have to go through a special session. But one of the things that the new language that we want to put in is for the period beginning January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, COVID-19 caused by the novel coronavirus shall be considered an injury for the purpose of this act and the nature of employee for which all coverage is provided by this act shall be considered to increase the risk of contracting COVID-19. The way that I understand the law now, and there are people on this line that understand it a whole lot better than I do, is under current law that the virus isn't covered under workman's comp. So it's my understanding that this language will make it that way. And for the question of, is that going to be part of your employer experience rating or your EER? The proposed language, and again, this is subject to change, is no injury related to the COVID-19 illness for which coverage is provided under this act for the claim arising on or before December 31st, 2020 shall be chargeable to an employer's experience rating under this section. So that is what the legislature and the executive branch are kind of working out. Again, what's going to happen is it's going to be massaged by a whole bunch of different people, but that's the intent of where we're at. I'm done.
Thank you, Representative. I've hit the wrong button, Warren, but anyway, I'll figure it out.
As a reminder, anyone wishing to ask questions can submit those using the Q&A tool, or you can use the raise my hand feature. We will call on you as time allows. We do have a question coming in, more a general conversational kind of question. What are the needs of operators and workers in the mining industry regarding coronavirus? Is there adequate PPE? What about how your work and employment has been hit by the ripple effects of the coronavirus recession? We're seeing the potential of major long-term damage to families across Wyoming, specifically with the soda ash slowdown. Even if nobody in the family is personally sickened, how is the mining industry and the state protecting working people and jobs?
Yeah, I know it seemed like it went away, but it seemed like Robert Struckman pointed that question toward Andy Martinez. Am I incorrect? Or maybe Travis has some comments there, or some of the private industries on the line.
Yeah, Ron, this is Andy Martinez. I'm the local president of 13214. I work for Genesis Alkali, and my counterpart here is Bill Madeira. He's the vice president of this local. We could probably shed a little light on the soda ash stuff if you'd like.
Yes, thanks, Andy.
So basically what's happening, I'm a 30-year veteran, and Bill's got 24, 25 years out there. The reason I have Bill sitting with me too, it's kind of a guess, is he's been through a layoff before. I've fortunately not been through a layoff. I've had a lot of things happen towards that direction. As we are a membership of roughly 700 people. We're 100% represented by the steelworkers. So we're proud to stand as our representatives of our local. Basically what we're seeing is we've had two plants. We have a mine, we have a surface, and then we have a solution mine plant. And we work for Fred Von Ahrens. He's the vice president of manufacturing for Genesis Alkali. As we've started to slow down, we've actually had a mothball one of our plants for roughly 4 to 6 months to be determined at a later time. Along with that, we negotiated a shutdown package for that. We've absorbed all them people over for a significant amount of money. Along the way, we've also put in place a furlough package. That's kind of why we're here. That's kind of why Ms. Tammy Johnson has asked us to speak. But the furlough package, we were trying to, we haven't talked the word layoff yet, but this is something to maybe help alleviate a possible layoff. With the Wyoming workforce and the chances for unemployment, we're furloughing roughly 70 folks right now, which is helping quite a bit. But as we start to lose tonnage, we have 4 soda ash plants, and at one point in Southwest Wyoming, we may have one of them that doesn't produce smoke. If there's no steam or smoke coming out of them stacks, it doesn't matter if you have 35 years or 3 minutes, we're not going to be working. We see the COVID virus as the biggest culprit to that, because no matter what we do, if we're still working, we still have to be able to send that someplace to be manufactured into everything that everybody uses that they don't understand what soda ash is. So we're feeling the pressure and the pinch. Shout out to Fred Von Ahrens. He's trying to do everything he can to keep our plant running, as well as the other directors of the other plants. But it's a scary time for something that's been very, very solid for so long, that with oil and gas leaving, coal leaving, and our powerhouse leaving, people are flocking to our soda ash plant for a place of stability, and we don't offer that right now. Very scary.
Thank you for sharing this story, Andy. About 9 minutes to go here. Time for maybe 3 or 4 more questions. We'll see, but I think looks like maybe one for Travis and possibly Ed. Is the state of Wyoming allocating any funding to promote the importance of being energy independent, Wyoming mined products versus imported, et cetera, due to some of the worldwide impact? And maybe as a sub-component of that, Travis, or someone on the call, maybe a little more info about the President Trump and the uranium, what are the opportunities for Wyoming with the national stockpile effort and stopping the import of the Russian uranium. Maybe someone could provide a little detail there for Wyoming's role.
I'll take a stab at it first, Ron, and then maybe Jason Beggar can jump in as far as some of the appropriations that have been given for technology and exports. And I know we've got a couple of our uranium guys on the line, and maybe they can talk a little bit more about the recent announcement from the Nuclear Fuels Working Group of the intent of the federal government to build up a domestic uranium stockpile. But that is good news. But again, that's only kind of a plan, and not there's no rubbers hit the road on that yet. And so, yeah, there is stuff out there, but until those dollars start flowing, and until we start seeing some results on some of that, we are where we are. So with that, I would say if Jason's still on the line and can talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that they're doing with the technology side of things and the coal carbon capture research and development, and also whatever is being done with trying to get our coal exported. And then if Paul Goranson or John Cash or Wayne Hiley can kind of talk a little bit more about the federal stuff with the uranium, that might be the best way to go on this one.
Thanks, Travis.
Sure. This is Jason, and I'm happy to hop in if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just never know with this technology stuff. So yeah. So and I am not the best IT person in the world, but.
It's like we might have lost you, Jason.
It seems that Jason's connection may have gotten disconnected for a moment. We'll wait for him to come back. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak to the question, please raise your hand. We can get you live on the line. Anyone else with any other questions can use the raise your hand feature or can enter it in with the Q&A tool, and we will get those questions answered as they pop through.
Ron, I'll jump back. If I could go back and just backtrack a little bit on what Andrew said earlier. He brought up a very good point. As we're having this discussion, these days here about how we're going to reopen our stuff up in Wyoming with our limited closures that we had, a broader issue that has to be brought up, and Andrew hit on it, is we can open up our economy. We can fully open up our economy tomorrow. But until some of these other states open up their economies, until some of these customers start buying, until some of these plants start opening up, we're at a logjam back in the supply chain as far as our soda ash producers, as far as our bentonite folks. Until we start get up and running nationally as a country, our coal producers are going to be down because we've got to start using electricity again. We've got to start driving again. So we're kind of at this spot in here where Wyoming can open its doors all we want, but until the rest of the country starts opening up, we're going to feel the effects of that, and we're probably going to be feeling it for a long time.
Yeah, good point.
Just
Thanks,
a comment.
Travis.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Hi, Ron.
Yeah.
Can I add some information kind of going back to Andrew Martinez and just some of the other conversation in regards to layoff?
Yes, please.
So one of my other hats that I wear is rapid response coordinator. And I know the word furlough has been mentioned. So I just want to make sure that I share the availability for any of the workforce centers to connect with the businesses. We're doing a lot of laid off webinars to really kind of help your employers during this difficult time. I completely realize that we have unemployment insurance, compensation, and all of the CARES Act availability. However, we do have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. It's dislocated worker. And we do have to make sure that they're actively engaged in an employment and or training activity. But most of the employees would be eligible for this. Income is not applicable when it comes to dislocated worker. So that is a benefit. We have been, having some do some online education just maybe to help with a career ladder, really still encouraging retention with that existing employer. But the reason why we do those types of processes is to help them with some support services as well. Of course, we have to document that there's a need, that even after their unemployment payments, that we could still potentially assist with some other support services such as rent, utilities, those types of things. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that there's a multitude of assistance that the Department of Workforce Services can help with. Please direct them to our WyomingWorkforce.org website and then contact any of the 20 workforce centers. We really welcome right now, of course, I think with COVID, we're doing a lot of things electronically just to minimize that contact, but just make sure that I'm putting that reminder of those great resources available.
Thank you, Andrea. It looks like Fred Von Ahrens would like to, has his hand raised, would like to say something. Fred, go ahead.
Thanks, Ron. I'm sorry. I was trying to do this on my phone for the last hour and I couldn't. I kept raising my *9 or whatever. If when it's appropriate, I'd just like to follow up on that question on Trona and preparing our folks, but I don't know if you want me to do it now or later. I don't want to interrupt the last flow.
No, please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would, as Andy and Bill talked, the one thing that's important, and, through the Mining Association, we have a lot of safety sharing and a lot of subcommittees. So Southwest Wyoming is blessed with 4 Trona plants. The businesses work really well together. Historically, there's always antitrust concerns, but when it comes to safety, the well-being of our employees or the community, we work together and we share. And establishing those relationships early on for today and for future has certainly served each one of the facilities well. We also now have Exxon, Simplot, and Church and Dwight involved in weekly meetings and are sharing what we're doing with our employees and what we're learning and how we can continue to stay out in front, following the CDC guidelines and certainly Governor Mark Gordon's directive. And also in a small community, it's important to be fairly consistent so that employees feel comfortable what's going on in that community. And, they don't see one thing going on in one business and one thing going on in another. When we're all learning, it really helps that instead of hearing and seeing things like, why aren't we doing this? Comments made, and you heard some positive things from Andy, but I've heard things like, I believe the company is doing everything we can do to keep us safe. Facebook comments that are out there, hey, the company gave me this bandana so that we can save N95s for the medical community. Things like that. And so I think it's really important to have open communications well before these types of events. On top of that, sharing and many of the companies brought up ideas and things that we can do and what we need to do. The changes that we've made are, the social distancing procedures in place, temperature checks, learning. The first one of the Trona facilities, Tata, that put in temperature checks, shared with the others what he learned and what they didn't learn in terms of what was effective. And then we were able to follow up at maximum capacity in break rooms, documenting who you work with. Came from a Salve idea, which was excellent that Todd's team brought that up to us, and it's working well for some of the businesses. Staggering shifts that come in. That was a tremendous mindset to take employees that start and stop at a certain time forever and have them come in. So no more than 9 come in at a time, because that's what we determine space in our man cage that takes the guys down into the mine to be 6 feet. And employees really responded really well to that. Andy and his team were out there being role models, wearing face coverings and things like that. And the biggest one now is contractors and making sure, and what Pam from Exxon was kind of helping us with, is making sure not only the contractors that are coming into your plant, but making sure those companies, before they are coming into your area, know what the rules are so they don't show up and find them. But making sure that you're isolating those contractors from your employees and certainly minimizing them during these times. So I just wanted to add that, Ron.
Thanks so much, Fred. And I know you've done a lot of work with networking through the Next Generation Sector Partnerships Project with the different regions around the state. One thing we're learning, and we are saying to businesses on these webinars, whether it's a restaurant on Main Street or a retail shop or all the way up to manufacturers or processors, there's strength in learning from each other and sharing best practices through this. But many have done it. It might be a different industry that's talking to another one, but they're still sharing best practices. It can be inside or outside the COVID issues. So I appreciate that perspective. There's a lot to be learned and strength and collaboration. I don't know, Warren, maybe one time for one more quick question before we wrap things up. Do we have any in the can?
We've got one here from Wayne Hiley. Wayne, you're live again. Go ahead and pose your question.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to circle back a little bit, but then I'm also going to try and answer Travis's inquiry on the matters for uranium mining. Look, the uranium mines have been idle for a while. And in the past, when some of these new mining facilities were opened, they used industrial revenue bonds through the business council and through the counties to finance at a very reasonable rate their new developments of mines. Today we have idle capacity of functional mines, and we're waiting for demand to come. The reality is the Nuclear Fuel Working Group, which was President Trump's initiative, really projected that demand is coming. The United States government is looking at, if we can get the funding through Congress, the investment of $150 million a year of government purchases of domestically produced uranium. In the state of Wyoming and the idle facilities in the state of Wyoming are well positioned to take advantage of that. But we have a chicken and an egg problem. We can see the demand is coming. but we can't get finance. Finance is really dependent on demonstrating demand. And, you know, today we can't get contracts from our utilities without demonstrating we have financing, and we can't get financing without demonstrating we have contracts. So the way the state could step in is really to maybe consider, just like the payroll protection loan program was fast-tracked with the federal government, can we fast-track some financing mechanisms, $10–20 million, you know, per company for these mining companies to prepare new mining areas for mining in advance of the demand. We can see the demand coming. We need to invest in our facilities to have our facilities ready for production. And, you know, the challenge is the chicken and egg of finance and demand. And if the state can step in and help us with finance, perhaps through a fast-tracked industrial revenue bonds program, we could put people to work tomorrow developing new well fields. We could be moving ahead and helping the economy and investing, you know, taking that money, that finance money, and putting it to work so that we can be better ready to meet the coming demand. That's my comment, and I really, you know, want to encourage the people with financial minds out there to consider how the state can help its industries employ people in the near term. I think that's one way.
Thank you, Ryan. That's really helpful information. And I know I'm taking some notes, and I'm sure a lot of people are on this call. So, Warren, anybody else before we hang up here? Oh, you're on mute, Warren.
We have no other questions and no other raised hands at this time, Ron.
All right. Well, I really, again, appreciate everybody from the private industry to our partners like Travis and Jason, interagency and associations, and all the legislators on the call. Thank you very much. I want to wrap up saying wyomingbusiness.org/COVID-19 has a lot of helpful info. We keep refreshing it as we learn more. And there are also intake forms on there. If you were on here and you thought, oh, I wish I'd asked something, or you just didn't feel like raising your hand during this meeting, we are taking intake forms. We want to hear from industry, your feedback, what needs to maybe happen to, you can suggest, and we will be stockpiling these responses. That form is a great way to submit that, and we are collecting those. You'll see it on the homepage of that COVID-19 webpage. Thank you very much. We are recording these. We'll put them on the Wyoming Business Council YouTube channel, and I appreciate it. And I encourage people to join the business transition webinars, 2 tomorrow, 2 Friday, if you want to learn more about the orders and the governor leading the effort to try to get back to some normalcy here methodically in Wyoming. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.